Let's talk about trust. It's the glue that holds all of our relationships together. In fact, the science of happiness tells us it's one of the biggest predictors of our well-being. But here's a wild thought for you. What if our natural instincts, our gut feelings about who to trust, are actually a little bit broken?
Okay, so let me ask you something directly. Think about the last time you met someone totally new. How long did it really take for you to get a vibe from them? To make that first call on whether you could trust them or not. Was it a few minutes? Maybe an hour?
Well, get ready for this. It turns out social psychology studies show that we make that first impression, that first snap judgment about trustworthiness, in less than 30 seconds. Yeah, that's literally faster than it takes to make a cup of tea.
And here's the really fascinating part. In those first few crucial seconds, our brain isn't logically analyzing facts or observing behavior. Nope. Instead, it's just having this immediate internal emotional reaction to things. Cues like a person's face, their tone of voice, or maybe even how much they remind us of someone we already know. It's all about that initial chemistry.
And this brings us to a really critical point from the science of happiness. What we feel in that first half minute, well, it isn't always what's actually true. That emotional reaction can feel so powerful and so real, but it can also be powerfully, powerfully misleading.
So, let's dive into these hidden traps, shall we? I like to think of them as little bugs in our brain's ancient survival software. These mental shortcuts. We call them cognitive biases. They feel like they're saving us energy, but in reality, they often cost us our peace of mind by leading us to make some pretty big mistakes in judgment.
Now we're going to focus on two of the biggest culprits here. First up, we've got what's called affinity bias. This is basically our tendency to automatically trust people who are similar to us, people who look, sound, or think like we do. And then there's confirmation bias. This is our brain's really stubborn habit of only looking for and noticing information that proves our first gut feeling was right along all along. Affinity bias feels great, doesn't it? It creates this instant feeling of comfort, of connection. But let's be real for a second. Just because someone happens to like the same sports team or grew up in the same town, that doesn't actually mean they're reliable, right? Similarity is really just an illusion of safety. It's not a true measure of character. And confirmation bias, it is a huge energy drain. Think about it. Once we've made that quick 30-second call, our brain just goes into defense mode. It starts cherry-picking evidence to prove we were right and completely ignores anything that might contradict us. We end up spending way more energy defending our own story than we do just observing the actual person right in front of us. So, all of these biases together, they lay the perfect groundwork for another super common illusion we all fall for. It's the classic mistake of confusing how confident a person seems with how competent they actually are. And this really breaks down the difference, right? Self-belief is a feeling. It's I feel capable of doing this. But competence? That's a fact that's demonstrated through actual action. It's I am capable, and hey, here's the proof. They are two totally different things.
When someone projects that immense confidence, it creates a really strong emotional reaction in us. We feel reassured, maybe we're even a little impressed. But, and this is a big but, that feeling is not evidence. So here's the crucial point. Real reliability, true trustworthiness, that only reveals itself over time. It shows up in repeated behaviors, in consistency, and in promises that are actually kept.
Okay, I know this might all sound a bit tricky, maybe even like our brains are just wired to fail at this. But here's the big turning point. This is the central idea from the Happywise philosophy. What if, just what if, we stopped treating trust like some mysterious gut instinct and started treating it like a practical skill? Something that you can actually learn and practice and get better at. Well, that is exactly where we're headed next. I'm going to give you a simple but really powerful toolkit. It's just 3 questions you can ask yourself to move beyond those flawed first impressions and start building a much more accurate picture of people. All right, let's break this toolkit down. Step 1 is all about self-awareness. You have to ask yourself, what's my default setting when it comes to trust? Am I someone who opens up really quickly, maybe even a little too easily, or do I tend to be more guarded, maybe assume the worst in people? Okay, step 2, we become detectives of our own past judgments. Really think about it. How often has that 30-second gut feeling actually been right? What about that colleague you instantly liked? Did they turn out to be a great teammate? Or were there some red flags you missed? And finally, step 3 is all about continuous improvement. Because look, when we get it wrong, and we all do, what can we learn about our own biases that will help us sharpen our judgment for next time? So why bother with all this work?
why does training our ability to trust even matter? Well, it's actually pretty simple. The science of happiness is crystal clear on this. The quality of our relationships is one of the biggest drivers of our well-being. And you just can't have a healthy relationship without trust. It's the bedrock of everything.
So, to wrap this all up, really, training yourself to trust wisely comes down to 4 key actions. First, you've got to recognize that initial spark of chemistry for what it is, just a feeling, not a fact. Second, consciously make an effort to build a genuine connection. Third, really listen to who the person is before you rush to judgment. And finally, apply the discipline to simply observe what they do over time.
And this, right here, is the ultimate takeaway. This isn't just some abstract mental exercise. It's a direct investment in your own happiness. Because when you train this skill, when you get better at trust, you directly improve the quality of your relationships. And that, in turn, boosts your overall level of happiness. It's that simple.
So, I'll leave you with one final thought to take with you. Now that you have this new lens, this new way of thinking about trust, take a moment and just ask yourself, who in your life might be worth reevaluating?